All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comics YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about Young Griff, one of my favorite characters going into Winds of Winter, and we will be continuing our 25 days of Winds of Winter. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do it up to channel grower show that might like this content as well. And let's get into Young Griff. So Young Griff, we know, has taken Storm's End. Now, this can happen for a number of reasons, whether that's by some sort of trickery, maybe using some of the routes maybe Davos used to get underneath and into Storm's End. We just don't know yet, and that's to be revealed one way or another. We're not going to talk about it in this video. If you guys want to see how I think Storm's End did get taken by Young Griff and John Con, I have a video up on the channel already, so I look at that video. But we know that Storm's End does eventually fall to Young Griff. So, what I think this is going to do is definitely make Young Griff look like a major player. Taking one of the biggest castles and most impregnable castles in Westeros is a major feat. So let's look at where I think Young Griff is going to get allies and what his actual path is going to be in Winds of Winter and in A Dream of Spring. So for one, I think Young Griff is destined to get the Dornish forces. Arianne is already kind of saying, yeah, we should kind of go with this guy. And I think that route is going to take her down trying to seduce and become the queen of the Seven Kingdoms with Young Griff at her side. And we've seen that Arianne is pretty good at manipulating men, as she does with Eris Oakheart. I think she'll be able to kind of do that to Young Griff, but I think Young Griff will also see this as a good alliance move, even though in the long term it's actually not. There's much better matches Young Griff could actually get, but who knows? Another thing we're going to have to talk about in this video is if Young Griff is actually a Targaryen or a Blackfyre. And to some degree, I actually don't think it's going to matter either way. But we'll get there when we get there when we talk about Daenerys when she enters the plot. So, Young Griff at this point takes Storm's End. He has the Dornish forces. Now, I do think the Dornish forces actually won't be directly involved in taking King's Landing right away, because I think they're actually going to be tied up with Darkstar. I did a video about Darkstar a couple days ago, where I think Darkstar would actually kind of lead a rebellion in Dorne, and I think Doran's going to have to put that down, and then once that happens, then I think the Dornish forces will be involved with Young Griff. Now, the other issue is going to be, does Young Griff actually get the Tyrells to back him as well? Because we'd have to assume, if Young Griff takes Storm's End, that some understanding happened between him and the Tyrell forces, or the Tyrell forces just backed off. Either way, it's a little sketchy. So, are the Tyrells leaving themselves open to maybe an alliance with Young Griff? It seems kind of in their family history to do so. It kind of leaves a complication, though, with Marjorie being married to Tommen. You could go and say, hey, it's not been consummated. It wasn't really a marriage. So then you could say, okay, Marjorie could maybe marry Young Griff, and they could have that alliance. I think that's very possible, just seeing about how the Lannisters, and when Cersei comes back into power, it's bad news for the Tyrells. But at this point, the Tyrell forces shouldn't know that. The Tyrell forces should know that Kevin Lannister's in charge, is giving really the Tyrells almost whatever they want, just because Kevin kind of has to make up for what Cersei did. So I don't know if that's the case. I think maybe the Tyrells at this point would be leaving themselves open to, hey, let's not commit to one side or the other, or go into a battle that we really don't need to go into. That wasn't our objective. Our objective was kind of like to siege Storm's End and then to eventually take it or force them to surrender the castle. If there's another force coming in, little different circumstances. So I think that's probably the Tyrell thinking there. Now, the next question would be, okay, so let's say in this scenario, the Tyrells just kind of sit out the battle, the war, and we see that Young Griff and his Golden Company, they go to King's Landing. They find the doors are basically wide open. So I want to parallel the sack of King's Landing at the end of Robert's Rebellion to Young Griff's. Now, I think it'll be a little bit different in the fact that I don't think Young Griff will actually sack the city. I think it's going to be more like Young Griff is coming into the city being applauded by the people of King's Landing, cheered on as a hero. Because I think what we're going to see that's different is how Young Griff is treated by the people than Dany, where Dany is this foreign invader, and I think George is going to want to parallel that a lot. So I think actually taking King's Landing will actually be quite bloodless. If we want to actually parallel that back to the Dance of the Dragon, so this will be a huge House of the Dragon spoiler. Just wanted to let you guys know that. Where Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, and it's not really a battle. She just basically comes in and they surrender. So it could be something like that, but I think what Cersei Lannister will do when this happens is, seeing that all the people have turned on her, could maybe try to set off some of Aerys's wildfire. Now that then in turn would cause panic, chaos, then it could maybe look more like a sack of King's Landing type scenario. So what, by the end of all of this, I think Tommen dies, Myrcella dies. I think a lot of people have argued with me that they think Cersei will go back to Casterly Rock, and that's where Jaime will have his last kind of confrontation with her. I think it's possible. Don't get me wrong. I think it's possible. I personally think, though, we kind of have to clear out a lot of our villain characters going into the last book because of how much emphasis is going to be on the others. And I also kind of feel like it's a cop-out if Cersei survives. Cersei's made all of these bad decisions. She's quite literally screwed herself. For her to get away, I just don't feel like that is narratively the way George goes with stories. But maybe, I mean, maybe she flees to Casterly Rock and it only gets worse for her, and maybe her decision get even more and more worse. I don't know how that works out, but I personally think Cersei will actually die to Jaime. Both of them will die in King's Landing, and I think House Lannister, for the most part, comes down out of, like, besides the minor Lannisters, and Tyrion at this point. So, Young Griff takes the throne with Arianne as his queen. Possible, I think maybe 33% chance Marjorie and the Tyrells also join in on this. Maybe we have a scenario like what Chad has suggested in stream, usually, or even comments, that Aegon actually takes 2 queens, like Aegon the First did. Sorry, I hit the mic there for a second. That's very possible. I could definitely see that. I think it's maybe like 33% of the 33% chance, I think, of that happening. But with the Lannisters falling, the next question is going to be, do any Tyrells die? Because if no Tyrells die, I could see the Tyrells, even after the Lannisters fall, at this point they then switch to Aegon's side. That doesn't happen. If some Tyrells do end up dying because of Young Griff, I could also see the Tyrells switching to Dany's side when she comes over as well. So we now come to the head where this is around the time where I think Daenerys is starting to go to Westeros, where, like, you know, she's not making any more stops in Essos. The ships are, it's basically like the ending scene of, season 6, where she's on the ships and they're going towards Dragonstone. That, I think, could be where we see the ending of the 2 stories, where Young Griff has taken King's Landing, and we also see that Daenerys is coming over. So that sets up the conflict of the next 2 books to be on 2 fronts, of Young Griff and Dany, and the others, and the North, the Riverlands, the Vale, and that kind of idea. So what do we see here with Young Griff and Dany? How is their relationship going to be? I think regardless of if Young Griff is a Targaryen or a Blackfyre, I think the result will be the same. I think Young Griff will actually be quite cocky and have a little bit of an attitude. Now, we have to remember Young Griff is a very young guy, and we've already seen he has a temper, even without all of this, or even with all this training that he's been going under his whole life. And we also know Daenerys herself is going to be a little bit, I think, spiteful towards Young Griff. I think, yes, she will be hoping that this is a family member, but as I talked about with Daenerys' video, I think she's going to figure out a lot about Young Griff before she even sets foot on Westeros. When you have this idea where if Daenerys talks to Illyrio, she could possibly find out that A, he's a Blackfyre, 2, that he was also being hidden, even from Daenerys and Viserys, and was being treated much better and being trained on how to actually be a king. Why wasn't that being given to Viserys? Is what I think Daenerys is going to be thinking. Could things for her brother have been much different? Could her brother have been better? I think it's very possible. I mean, but we just don't know. And I think Daenerys will have some of that jealousy towards Young Griff, where Young Griff also will be someone that's being heralded as a hero in King's Landing, taking down the Mad Queen Cersei, and he will be returning to the Targaryen dynasty. And when Daenerys comes over, she's going to be almost a disturber of the peace, this foreign invader with a foreign army of slaves and Dothraki barbarians. That's how I think Westeros would view it. It's going to be an interesting idea where I think Daenerys is going to see a lot of pressure and hatred towards her. And that's what I think a lot of Marine has been building up, where Daenerys has felt a lot of joy from, helping people, freeing slaves, being accepted, being heralded as a hero. And now we've kind of flipped that on its head. How is that going to affect Daenerys? So I think Daenerys possibly could be going in, maybe not hostile, but a little bit on edge towards Young Griff on their meeting. And I think Young Griff on the same side of it's going to be, Daenerys, why should I bend the knee? But you won't do the same for me. I don't even think you would marry me to unite our claims either. So why should I do this? I'm the one that took King's Landing. I invaded Westeros. I didn't even need dragons to do it. I've united some of the kingdoms, and I've taken down and avenged the people that destroyed our family. I think that's the way Young Griff would view that situation. That's how I think, if I was 15, 16, around that area, I don't remember exactly how old Young Griff is, that's probably how I would look at the situation. Where when you're that young, I know people grow up faster in Westeros. That's kind of how you look at things. You're very selfish and you don't think about the consequences of your decisions. Look at Robb, where Robb, yes, militarily was very smart, but politically, not so much. And you look at the situation, it seems like almost a direct mirror of me, or not of me, but of Robb, where Young Griff is winning every battle. He's militarily doing pretty well, it would seem, this far in the war, but politically, marrying Arianne, I don't think is a great move. I mean, I think Aegon should be able to command the respect of the Dornish just because this is Elya's child. So I think Aegon, to me, is a character that I'm very interested to see how George builds upon his character. And what I think ultimately is going to come of this divide between the two is, I think we are going to see basically a Dance of the Dragons, even though Aegon doesn't have a dragon. It's going to be about kind of the Targaryens and maybe the Blackfire. So, I think Aegon's a Blackfire, so I think we see basically a Blackfire rebellion type of scenario. Even though technically in this situation, Daenerys would be the one rebelling against the crown since Aegon has the crown. Very interesting idea, and I'd love to see how that gets wrapped up. I personally think Daenerys is going to win just because she has the dragons. She really has every advantage over Young Griff. Maybe Young Griff militarily has maybe better military leadership. I wouldn't even go that far. The Unsullied, one of the greatest fighting forces, the Dothraki. I think maybe the Golden Company just have more like leadership. Maybe there. But even, with the Dornish as well, it'll be an interesting idea where you have the only force that really was able to ever take out dragons, really, on your side. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about Young Griff and Dany. I think the alternative route is that Young Griff actually decides to put his differences away with Daenerys until after the war, and he's involved with the war with the others, and then we see the resolution of that conflict. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think on all these ideas. I love Young Griff. He's one of my favorite characters going into Winds of Winter. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. We are going to be doing everybody's favorite character, Stannis Baratheon, in next video. So I'm very excited to do that. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.